The first indication of approaching danger came not with a thunderous roar, but with a whisper of electronic interference. It was a Tuesday morning when the global satellite networks began to flicker, their pristine signals interrupted by bursts of static that seemed to pulse with an alien rhythm. Dr. Rodriguez sat in her research lab at the Jet Propulsion Center, her eyes fixed on a series of computer screens that were rapidly displaying increasingly bizarre data patterns. Outside the window, the sky remained deceptively calm. A light breeze moved through the California landscape, carrying with it the scent of eucalyptus and the distant hum of morning traffic. Nothing suggested the imminent arrival of humanity's greatest challenge. The first visual confirmation came at 07:23 Universal Coordinated Time. Orbital telescopes, weather satellites, and deep space monitoring stations simultaneously captured images that would forever change human history. Massive vessels emerged from what scientists would later describe as quantum fold points, regions of space where conventional physics seemed to break down. These ships defied everything humans understood about space travel, material science, and technological possibility. The vessels were unlike anything human engineers had ever conceptualized. They were not the sleek, pointed designs of science fiction movies, nor were they the bulky industrial constructs of early space exploration. Instead, they appeared to be living structures, metallic yet organic, with surfaces that seemed to breathe and shift even as they maintained a coherent form. Each ship was kilometers long, dwarfing the largest human-made structures by orders of magnitude. Global communication networks went into immediate crisis mode. Military installations across every continent began emergency protocols, but the speed of the approach rendered most defensive strategies obsolete before they could be implemented. Intelligence agencies from different countries began rapid communication, their encrypted channels suddenly feeling fragile and outdated. In Washington, the Emergency Command Center erupted into controlled chaos. Generals and political leaders, who had spent decades preparing for potential global conflicts, found themselves completely unprepared for the reality now unfolding. Satellite imagery showed the alien fleet positioning itself around Earth with a precision that suggested mathematical perfection. The research team was among the first to decode partial transmissions from the approaching vessels. The language, if it could be called a language, was a complex matrix of quantum-encoded signals that seemed to exist simultaneously in multiple states. Traditional decryption methods failed completely. What little they could interpret suggested something far more terrifying than a simple invasion. These beings saw Earth not as a target to conquer, but as a resource to be processed. Military satellites began tracking the initial wave of smaller vessels breaking away from the main fleet. These scout ships moved with a fluidity that defied known principles of aerodynamics and space navigation. They descended through the atmosphere in patterns that suggested a collective intelligence far beyond individual ship control. Major cities around the world watched in a mixture of terror and disbelief. In Tokyo, massive holographic displays in public squares flickered with emergency broadcast signals. The streets of London became eerily quiet as people stopped and stared at the sky. New York's financial district, usually a hub of constant motion, ground to a sudden halt. The first physical contact occurred over the Pacific Ocean. A cluster of scout vessels approached with a precision that suggested they were studying the planet's defenses. Military aircraft scrambled to intercept, but their radar systems went dark the moment they approached the alien craft. Missiles locked and then mysteriously deactivated. Communication systems began to fail, creating pockets of technological silence across entire regions. What the approaching civilization did not understand, what they could not comprehend in their centuries of galactic conquest, was the nature of human adaptability. Every scan, every initial assessment suggested a straightforward subjugation. A primitive species with fragmented global systems, limited space technology, and no unified planetary defense mechanism. They were about to discover how wrong they could be. As the first alien vessels touched the outer edges of Earth's atmosphere, a planet that had spent millennia fighting its own internal conflicts suddenly found itself with a singular, unified purpose. The invasion had begun, but the real story was just about to unfold. The first ground landings happened with an unnatural silence that sent chills through every human witness. In rural Nebraska, a massive alien vessel descended onto a cornfield, its metallic surface rippling like liquid mercury against the golden wheat. Farmers who had survived decades of economic challenges stood their ground, watching with a mixture of terror and defiance as the craft's exterior began to pulse with an otherworldly luminescence. Communications had become a patchwork of fragmented signals. Cell towers stood like silent sentinels, most of their networks compromised by the alien technology. But humans had always been adaptable, and within hours of the initial invasion, underground communication networks began to emerge. In a small basement in São Paulo, Carlos Mendes, a former telecommunications engineer, worked feverishly. Surrounded by a collection of outdated computers, radio equipment, and jury-rigged communication devices, he began to map out the interference patterns created by the alien technology. What seemed like random noise to most was becoming a language. To him, a complex system of disruption that could potentially be understood and manipulated. Thousands of miles away, in a research facility outside Cairo, Dr. Fatima Hassan was making her own discoveries. Her team of computer scientists and signal analysts had begun to notice something extraordinary about the alien communication methods. The invaders relied on a seemingly perfect, mathematically precise system of information exchange. But perfection, they realized, could be a profound weakness. The alien ground forces moved with an algorithmic precision that initially seemed unstoppable. Military defenses crumbled in what appeared to be mere minutes. Tanks and aircraft became useless against technology that could neutralize electronic systems with a mere pulse of energy. Major cities watched in horror as communication networks collapsed and defense systems went dark. But something unexpected was happening at the ground level. In Tokyo, a group of university students repurposed medical imaging equipment to create makeshift scanning devices that could detect the alien technology's unique energy signatures. Their work, shared through encrypted messaging apps and underground networks, began to provide the first real insights into the invaders' technological infrastructure. A retired network security expert in Mumbai discovered that the aliens' communication system, while incredibly advanced, followed a predictable pattern. It was like a perfectly written piece of code, which meant it could be hacked, disrupted, or manipulated. He began working with a global network of programmers, creating adaptive algorithms designed to interfere with the alien communication networks. The invasion had been designed to be swift and decisive. The Vardak had conquered hundreds of worlds using a strategy of overwhelming technological superiority and psychological submission. They expected terror, confusion, and eventual compliance. Instead, they encountered something entirely unexpected: human creativity. In the mountains of Peru, a group of indigenous engineers combined traditional knowledge with modern technology. They understood systems of communication that went beyond electronic signals, using ancient techniques of observation, collective problem-solving, and adaptive thinking. Their approach to understanding the alien technology was fundamentally different from any computational method the invaders had encountered. Military strategists from around the world began to collaborate in ways they never had before. National boundaries became meaningless in the face of a global threat. A former Special Forces operator in Vancouver connected with a computer scientist in Cape Town, sharing insights about the alien ground troops' movement patterns. A marine biologist in Australia provided unexpected insights into the alien technology's possible weaknesses based on her understanding of adaptive biological systems. Each small victory was shared through underground networks, a method of temporarily disrupting an alien scout vehicle, a technique for protecting electronic equipment from energy pulses, insights into the invaders' communication methods. Slowly, a global resistance was taking shape, not through traditional military might but through human ingenuity and collective intelligence. The Vardak had made a critical miscalculation. They saw humans as a primitive species with limited technological capabilities. What they failed to understand was that human strength had never been about individual technological superiority. It was about adaptability, creativity, and the ability to transform challenges into opportunities. As the first day of invasion drew to a close, the aliens would begin to realize that they were not facing a simple planetary conquest. They were encountering a species that would redefine the very concept of resistance. The real war was just beginning. The breakthrough came from an unexpected combination of disciplines. Dr. Elena Martinez stood at the intersection of neuroscience, quantum computing, and signal theory, her mind racing faster than the complex algorithms scrolling across her multiple computer screens. The global research team she had assembled was unlike any scientific collaboration in human history. A network of brilliant minds, connected through encrypted channels, working to unravel the mystery of the alien communication systems. Their first significant discovery was both simple and profound. The Vardak communication technology operated on a principle of absolute precision, a perfectly ordered system that left no room for improvisation or unexpected input. Human communication, by contrast, was gloriously chaotic. Where the aliens saw noise, humans saw potential. Where the invaders sought perfect order, humans thrived on unpredictability. In a converted warehouse in Seoul, a team of linguists, computer scientists, and cognitive researchers worked around the clock. They began to analyze the alien signal patterns, discovering that what seemed like random interference was actually a highly structured but inflexible communication method. Dr. Martinez realized that the aliens' technology was fundamentally unable to process truly random information. The team developed what they called adaptive noise generators, complex algorithms designed to introduce precisely calculated randomness into the alien communication networks. It was like speaking a language that deliberately broke all grammatical rules, forcing the listener to constantly recalibrate their understanding. Parallel research centers emerged across the globe. In Berlin, a group of quantum physicists discovered that the alien technology relied on a form of quantum communication that assumed predictable response patterns. They began developing interference algorithms that could exploit these assumptions, creating digital ghosts that would confuse and misdirect the alien systems. Meanwhile, in a secure research facility in New Zealand, a team of neurologists made a groundbreaking connection. They compared the alien communication systems to rigid neural networks and discovered a critical weakness. The invaders' technology processed information in a linear, deterministic way, completely unlike the human brain's ability to make intuitive leaps and process information through complex, non-linear pathways. Dr. Martinez's global team started to map out a revolutionary approach. They would not try to match the alien technology's computational power. Instead, they would overwhelm it with deliberate unpredictability. It was a strategy born of human creativity, using chaos as a weapon. The first practical test came unexpectedly. A small resistance group in the mountains of Chile managed to capture a damaged alien communication device. Working with limited resources, they began to develop what would become known as the pattern interrupt technology. By introducing carefully crafted signal anomalies, they could create momentary blind spots in the alien communication network. Global, universities mobilized their entire computational resources. Students and professors alike contributed to what became the most extensive collaborative research project in human history. Machine learning algorithms were retrained to generate the most unpredictable response patterns possible. What the aliens saw as weakness, human variability, became the most potent weapon of resistance. In the heart of Silicon Valley, a group of game designers contributed a unique perspective. They understood how complex systems could be manipulated through unexpected inputs. Their experience in creating artificial intelligence for video games provided crucial insights into how to break the aliens' predictive algorithms. The research wasn't just technical. Anthropologists and social scientists provided critical input about human communication patterns. They explained how human language and interaction were fundamentally different from any known communication system in the universe. Metaphor, context, emotional nuance. These were concepts that the alien technology could not comprehend. As weeks passed, the global research network began to see results. Small-scale tests showed that their adaptive interference could temporarily blind alien communication systems. Military strategists began to receive fragmented but crucial intelligence about alien movements and technologies. The Vardak had conquered hundreds of worlds by presenting an insurmountable technological barrier. They had never encountered a species that would turn that very technology against them. Humanity was learning to speak a language of controlled chaos, a symphony of disruption that the invaders could neither predict nor understand. Dr. Martinez looked at the latest data stream, a smile crossing her face. They were no longer just defending themselves. They were learning to fight back. Psychological warfare became humanity's most unexpected weapon. The Vardak had conquered hundreds of worlds through calculated precision and overwhelming technological superiority. They understood fear, submission, and systematic breakdown. What they could not comprehend was human irrationality, the ability to find humor, hope, and defiance in the most desperate circumstances. In occupied Tokyo, a group of street artists began a campaign that would baffle the alien intelligence networks. They started creating massive, intricate street murals that depicted the invasion in surreal, almost nonsensical ways. Each artwork contained hidden communication codes, messages of resistance, and deliberate visual noise that confused the aliens' pattern recognition systems. What appeared to be simple graffiti was actually a complex communication network hiding in plain sight. A retired comedian in New York developed what became known as the Psychological Disruption Protocol. Working with a network of writers, performers, and communication experts, he began broadcasting content designed to completely perplex the alien observers. Radio signals carried comedy routines filled with complex wordplay, cultural references, and absurdist humor that defied any logical interpretation. The alien communication systems designed to process straightforward information became increasingly overwhelmed. In the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, local community leaders transformed resistance into an art form. They developed a communication system using traditional music, dance, and storytelling, methods of sharing information that had nothing to do with electronic signals. Children became crucial intelligence carriers, using games and songs to pass critical information that the alien technology could not decode. The Vardak had a critical weakness that humans instinctively understood: their inability to process emotional complexity. Their invasion strategy relied on predictable psychological responses: terror, submission, despair. Instead, they encountered a species that could find hope in the most impossible situations, that could laugh in the face of overwhelming odds. A group of linguists and communication experts began developing what they called cultural interference packets. These were carefully crafted pieces of human culture, music, art, storytelling, designed to completely overwhelm the aliens' ability to process information. They discovered that human creativity was a form of communication that defied all technological analysis. In the mountains of Afghanistan, a group of local resistance fighters used traditional communication methods that predated electronic technology. They developed a complex system of signal flags, smoke signals, and mountain communication techniques that the alien technology could not intercept. Their methods of sharing information were so fundamentally different from electronic communication that they became invisible to the invaders. Social media became an unexpected battleground. Users around the world began flooding communication networks with deliberately confusing content. Memes, inside jokes, complex cultural references, and intentionally nonsensical information created a tsunami of data that the alien systems could not process. What seemed like random noise was actually a sophisticated form of resistance. A network of performance artists turned psychological warfare into an art form. They would stage elaborate public performances that seemed to have no purpose. Complex dance routines, spontaneous musical performances, theatrical events that defied logical interpretation. Each performance contained hidden messages, communication codes, and deliberate attempts to disrupt the aliens' understanding of human behavior. The Vardak had a fundamental misunderstanding of human communication. They saw information as a linear, predictable process. Humans understood communication as something far more complex, a living, breathing, constantly evolving system of shared meaning that went far beyond simple data transfer. Documentary filmmakers began creating visual records, of the invasion that deliberately played with narrative structure. Their films contained multiple layers of meaning, visual metaphors, and narrative techniques that confused traditional linear storytelling. What appeared to be simple recordings were actually complex communication tools. As weeks turned into months, the aliens began to realize they were facing something unprecedented. This was not a species that could be conquered through technological superiority. This was a species that could turn creativity itself into a weapon of resistance. The psychological battlefield was becoming humanity's greatest strength. Where the Vardak expected submission, they found defiance. Where they expected terror, they found humor. Where they expected uniform response, they found infinite variation. Humanity was fighting back, one joke, one song, one piece of art at a time. Necessity became the mother of unprecedented innovation. The global resistance discovered that every piece of technology could be a potential weapon, every everyday object a tool of survival. In workshops, garages, and makeshift laboratories around the world, humans began to reimagine their environment through the lens of survival and resistance. In rural Kansas, a collective of farmers and agricultural engineers transformed irrigation systems into sophisticated communication networks. Automated sprinkler systems became signal relays, water pipes converted into underground communication channels that the alien technology could not detect. Tractors and harvesting equipment were modified with improvised electronic countermeasures, turning agricultural machinery into mobile defensive units. A group of Silicon Valley engineers who had been developing autonomous delivery systems quickly pivoted their technology. Consumer drones meant for package delivery were repurposed into reconnaissance units. Their small size, ability to operate in diverse terrains, and adaptable programming made them perfect for gathering intelligence about alien movements. Each drone became a collaborative effort, with programmers from around the world contributing to their development through secure online platforms. In the shipyards of Hamburg, maritime engineers began modifying cargo vessels and fishing boats. These ships were converted into mobile communication centers and temporary shelters. Their robust construction and ability to move quickly made them ideal for supporting resistance operations. Welding workshops worked around the clock, transforming civilian vessels into adaptive defense platforms. Manufacturing facilities around the world underwent rapid transformation. A textile factory in Bangladesh repurposed its machinery to create lightweight electromagnetic-resistant clothing for resistance fighters. Automotive plants in Detroit began producing modified vehicles with improvised shielding against alien energy weapons. Every production line became a potential front in the war of adaptation. Medical researchers made breakthrough discoveries in human resilience. Hospitals and research centers began developing protective technologies that could help humans survive in compromised environments. They created portable systems that could detect and counteract alien energy signatures, developing medical technologies that went far beyond traditional treatment methods. The education system became a critical component of the resistance. Universities transformed their research programs, with every department contributing to the war effort. Engineering students designed improvised communication devices. Anthropology departments developed cultural resistance strategies. Computer science programs created adaptive algorithms to counter alien technologies. In the mountains of Peru, indigenous communities shared traditional knowledge about survival and adaptation. Their understanding of local environments, combined with modern technological insights, created unique defensive strategies. They showed how human survival had always been about adaptability, about finding solutions in the most challenging circumstances. Recycling centers became critical research and development hubs. Electronic waste was carefully disassembled and repurposed into communication devices, defensive equipment, and intelligence gathering tools. Nothing was wasted. Every discarded smartphone, every broken computer became a potential resource in the resistance. Amateur radio enthusiasts developed a global network of communication that operated outside traditional electronic systems. They created sophisticated communication methods using low-power transmissions, Morse code variations, and adaptive frequency hopping that the alien technology could not easily track or interrupt. Makerspaces and community workshops became centers of resistance innovation. People shared designs for improvised equipment, developed collaborative problem-solving techniques, and created networks of mutual support. What began as local initiatives quickly became global collaborative efforts. Deep printing technology emerged as a critical tool of resistance. Design files for protective equipment, communication devices, and defensive tools were shared across secure networks. Anyone with a 3D printer could become a manufacturer of resistance equipment. The decentralized nature of this production made it impossible for the aliens to shut down. The Vardak had expected a straightforward conquest. Instead, they found themselves fighting against a species that could turn nearly anything into a weapon of resistance. Humans were not just fighting back, they were reimagining the very concept of warfare. Every limitation became an opportunity. Every challenge became a chance for innovation. The human capacity for adaptation was proving to be the most powerful weapon in the universe. The turning point came not from a single moment of heroism, but from a global network of collective intelligence. World governments, which had spent centuries in competition, now found themselves united by a singular purpose. The lines that had once divided nations became irrelevant in the face of a threat that targeted all of humanity. In a repurposed underground research facility beneath the Swiss Alps, military strategists from every continent gathered. The room was a testament to human diversity. Military leaders, scientists, communication experts, and local resistance coordinators formed a war council unlike any in human history. Their strategy was not about overwhelming force, but about precise, coordinated disruption. Dr. Elena Rodriguez presented the latest breakthrough in communication interference. Her team had developed a method of creating quantum-level disruptions in the alien communication networks. It was not about direct confrontation, but about introducing calculated uncertainty into the invaders' most critical systems. The global satellite network, once a potential vulnerability, became a weapon of unprecedented sophistication. Communication experts from India, Brazil, Russia, and the United States worked together to create a living, adaptive communication system. Each satellite became more than a simple relay point. They were now active nodes in a global defensive network. Naval forces from around the world transformed their approach. Aircraft carriers became mobile research and communication centers. Submarine fleets, with their ability to operate undetected, became critical intelligence gathering units. Maritime nations shared technologies and strategies, creating a unified ocean-based defense network that the aliens had not anticipated. In the Australian outback, a group of indigenous trackers and environmental scientists developed ground-based detection systems that could track alien movements with unprecedented accuracy. Their understanding of landscape and environmental patterns provided insights that traditional military reconnaissance could not match. The African Union took a lead role in developing adaptive ground defense strategies. Countries that had historically been marginalized now became critical centers of resistance innovation. Their experience with survival under challenging conditions provided unique insights into unconventional warfare. Cyber warfare teams from around the world began a coordinated attack on the alien communication infrastructure. It was not about brute force hacking, but about introducing complex, adaptive algorithms that could exploit the smallest weaknesses in the alien systems. Each attack was a carefully choreographed dance of digital disruption. Humanitarian efforts became a critical part of the resistance strategy. Medical teams developed rapid response protocols for treating injuries caused by alien technologies. Food production networks were redesigned to ensure global supply chains could continue to function under invasion conditions. Space agencies from multiple countries pooled their resources. The International Space Station became a critical observation and research platform. Astronauts and scientists worked together to develop strategies for space-based resistance, sharing information through carefully encrypted channels. The global response was characterized by its unprecedented level of cooperation. Cultural differences became strengths rather than barriers. A communication strategy developed in Tokyo could be adapted by a resistance group in Buenos Aires. A defensive technology created in Cape Town could be modified by engineers in Moscow. Educational Institutions worldwide transformed their research priorities. Every discipline became part of the war effort. Linguists worked on communication strategies. Artists developed psychological warfare techniques. Engineers created adaptive technologies. The Resistance discovered that the Vardak's greatest weakness was their inability to understand human unpredictability. Where the aliens expected uniform response, they encountered infinite variation. Every attempt to categorize human behavior failed because humans refused to be categorized. As the global counteroffensive took shape, the Vardak began to realize they were facing something entirely unprecedented. This was not a simple planetary invasion. This was a species-wide immune response, with every human becoming a potential point of resistance. The war had become more than a fight for survival. It was a declaration of what humanity could become when truly united. Earth's orbital space became a battlefield of unprecedented complexity. The final confrontation would not be won through traditional warfare, but through a symphony of human ingenuity that defied every principle of conflict the Vardak understood. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the hastily converted Mission Control Center, her team of scientists, programmers, and strategists, working with a precision born of months of resistance. Their plan was audacious, a multi-layered attack that would target the very core of the alien technological infrastructure. The first wave began with a global electromagnetic pulse unlike anything previously conceived. Developed by a team of physicists from 12 different countries, the pulse was not designed to destroy, but to disrupt. It was a carefully crafted signal that would introduce cascading uncertainties into the alien communication networks. Simultaneously, resistance groups on the ground launched their own coordinated efforts. In the mountains of Nepal, a group of local engineers had developed a series of ground-based signal generators that would create massive interference patterns. Their technology, built from repurposed telecommunications equipment and local resources, would serve as a critical component of the global defense strategy. Space-based assets played a crucial role. The International Space Station, along with a network of modified satellites, began broadcasting a complex series of signal patterns. Each transmission was a carefully designed piece of a larger puzzle, a communication strategy that would overwhelm the alien computational systems. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a network of underwater research stations launched their own phase of the attack. Oceanographic research vessels, modified with experimental communication technologies, began broadcasting adaptive signal patterns that could penetrate the aliens' most secure communication channels. The cyber warfare teams had developed a revolutionary approach. Instead of trying to break the alien communication systems, they would flood them with information, not just random noise, but carefully constructed data packets that would create computational paradoxes. Each transmission was a digital weapon, designed to confuse and destabilize. In the skies above major cities, modified aircraft became part of the global defense network. Drones and repurposed commercial aircraft carried sophisticated jamming equipment, creating a moving network of signal interference that constantly shifted and adapted. The Vardak fleet found itself facing an entirely unexpected form of warfare. Their computational systems, designed to process information with perfect precision, began to fail. Each attempt to analyze human communication resulted in more confusion. The more they tried to understand, the less sense anything made. A team of linguists and computer scientists had developed what they called contextual chaos generators. These were communication systems that could change meaning and structure instantaneously, creating linguistic patterns that defied all known rules of communication. What seemed like nonsense to the alien systems was actually a highly sophisticated form of resistance. The resistance had transformed warfare into an art form. Every action was a carefully choreographed piece of a larger strategy. Military operations, scientific research, cultural production, all became part of a unified effort to resist the invasion. Psychological warfare reached its peak. Resistance groups began broadcasting content designed to completely overwhelm the alien perception systems. Art, music, complex cultural references, and deliberately nonsensical information created a tsunami of data that the alien technology could not process. In orbit, the final stage of the attack began. Modified space platforms launched a series of quantum-level disruption signals. These were not weapons in the traditional sense, but sophisticated communication devices designed to introduce fundamental uncertainties into the alien technological infrastructure. The Vardak fleet began to fragment. Their perfectly ordered communication systems started to break down. Each attempt to restore order only created more chaos. The human approach to warfare, adaptive, unpredictable, fundamentally creative, had become their ultimate weapon, Siu. The final moments of the confrontation approached. It became clear that this was more than a battle. This was a fundamental clash of approaches to existence. The Vardak represented a universe of perfect order and predictability. Humanity represented something entirely different, a celebration of chaos, creativity, and infinite possibility. The war was not about to be won. It had already been won the moment humans refused to be anything other than wonderfully, impossibly human. The silence that followed the conflict was unlike anything in recorded history. Cities that had been battlegrounds slowly came back to life, their inhabitants emerging from shelters and makeshift refuges. The world looked different, not just because of the physical damage, but because humanity had fundamentally changed. In the weeks following the Vardak retreat, scientific delegations from across the globe began to analyze the abandoned alien technology. What they discovered was far more than simple mechanical artifacts. Each piece of equipment told a story of a civilization that had never encountered true creativity, true unpredictability. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the first comprehensive analysis of the alien communication systems. Her team discovered that the Vardak had developed technology so precise, so algorithmically perfect, that they had lost the ability to adapt. Their entire civilization was built on a principle of absolute predictability, a concept that humans had completely dismantled during the invasion. Global communication networks began to share the stories of resistance. A farmer in Nebraska who had repurposed agricultural equipment into defensive units. A group of students in Tokyo who had developed communication interference techniques. Indigenous trackers in Australia who had provided critical intelligence about alien movements. Each story became a testament to human resilience. The United Nations convened a special session unlike any in its history. Representatives from every continent gathered not to discuss division, but to celebrate a newfound global unity. The invasion had done what decades of diplomacy could not. It had created a truly unified human perspective. Scientific research took on a new direction. Universities around the world began developing entire fields of study dedicated to understanding the lessons learned from the invasion. Departments of adaptive systems emerged, combining disciplines that had previously been seen as incompatible. Creativity became recognized as a critical form of intelligence. Space exploration programs underwent a radical transformation. Where previous efforts had been limited by national interests, now they became truly global initiatives. The technologies developed during the resistance became the foundation of a new approach to understanding the universe. Diplomatic teams began to prepare for potential future encounters with other spacefaring civilizations. The lessons learned from the Vardak invasion became a critical part of human strategic thinking. Humanity had discovered that its greatest strength was not in technological superiority, but in its ability to adapt, to find unexpected solutions. Cultural production exploded with new energy. Artists, musicians, writers, and performers created works that explored the invasion from every possible perspective. Museums began to collect and preserve the improvised technologies that had been critical to the resistance. Each artifact told a story of human ingenuity. Educational systems were completely redesigned. Creativity became as important as traditional academic skills. Schools began to teach adaptive thinking, collaborative problem-solving, and the value of diverse perspectives. The rigid educational models of the past were replaced by more dynamic, flexible approaches. The Vardak, in their retreat, left behind more than just technological artifacts. They had provided humanity with a mirror, a way of understanding its own unique capabilities. Scientific analysis suggested that the invasion had been a test, a way of measuring the potential of emerging civilizations in the galaxy. Global economic systems began to change. The collaborative methods developed during the resistance became models for new forms of economic and social organization. The idea of competition was replaced by a more nuanced understanding of collective problem-solving. Environmental restoration became a global priority. The technologies developed during the resistance provided new approaches to addressing climate challenges. Humanity had learned to see the planet as a complex, adaptive system, much like the defense strategies that had defeated the invasion. Psychological research revealed profound changes in human consciousness. The shared experience of resistance had created a new form of collective understanding. People reported a deeper connection to each other, a sense of global citizenship that transcended previous boundaries. Diplomatic teams began to prepare communication protocols for potential future encounters with other civilizations. The lessons learned from the Vardak invasion became a critical part of human strategic thinking. Humanity had discovered that its greatest strength was not in technological superiority, but in its ability to adapt, to find unexpected solutions. The first memorials to the resistance were constructed. They were not monuments of military victory, but celebrations of human creativity. Each structure told a story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of a species that had faced an impossible challenge and emerged not just surviving, but fundamentally transformed. The stars looked different now. Humanity had written itself a new chapter in the story of the universe, a chapter about hope, creativity, and the infinite possibilities of collective intelligence.